Hello, everyone. I would simply like to say up front that this will probably be my last video on the Dragon Prince, or at least my last video for a long time. I have nothing against the show, even if it came to disappoint me a bit by season 7. I simply think that I have said all I really have to say about it. I cannot really think of a lot of other ideas about the Dragon Prince that are of any particular interest to me at this point. I've made more than enough Raylan videos, I've made quite a few theory videos and analysis videos. And I simply want to say that I really have had a wonderful time being here in this little Dragon Prince bubble. It's been enjoyable. I am in a much different place than I was back then. I started making Dragon Prince videos around 2019, I believe. That is about 6 years ago now. Wow. That was in a pre-COVID time, and I was just starting my undergraduate education at Columbia. I graduated from there, graduated from St. Andrews, got my master's, and now I'm working on my doctorate in the University of Washington. And I am a teacher now, so I greatly thank you all for really helping me. I really think that helping you all through giving you my thoughts, at least I hope it's been a help to you, has also been helpful to me in terms of developing my capacity to talk unscripted with just a few notes here and there to an audience about a topic for an extended period of time. So I greatly thank you all for that. But without delaying too much, let's talk about Terry. And he's an interesting character. He does not exist in the first 3 seasons of the show, and he appears in season 4 because Claudia is separated from everyone, and the show really needs another character besides just her and Viren and the spirit of Erebos. Terry ultimately serves as a kind of what TV Tropes calls a morality pet. An inoffensive character who is more on the side of good and who is there to both check the worst impulses of a certain character, in this case that being Claudia, and when he is abused, psychologically or otherwise, it provides a sense of how Claudia is straying further and further from the path of righteousness and justice. This is more or less the role that Soren played in the earlier seasons of the show, but Soren is firmly on the side of the good guys, firmly on the side of Team Callum by the end of season 3, and so they need someone else to fill that role. So on a structural level, I think the character makes sense. I think he has validity. It's just that I don't find him particularly interesting. And it's because the show never really goes through the trouble of making him interesting. If you said, okay, here's an Earthblood elf who joins up with Claudia, who has this deeply skeptical, even cynical perspective toward elves, what's up with that? What's the dynamic there? That could have been an interesting idea, but the show doesn't really develop that. It doesn't really develop a lot of things regarding Terry. A lot of character writing fundamentally works on what one can call a Hegelian dynamic. Simply that a character has these certain beliefs and ideals at the start of a work of fiction, And those beliefs and ideals are in contrast against the way of the world, the way things are as the character encounters them, and so the character tries to oppose the way of the world. But ultimately, the way of the world cannot be so easily moved, and it's ultimately the character's perspective that is changed or shifted somewhat. That does not mean the way of the world wins. It means that the character, if they are to emerge triumphant, must temper or modulate their perspectives in reference to the experiences that they have, and so emerge with a more mature and more thoughtful understanding of the world. A fully developed view of the world. This is fundamentally the journey that Hegel says civilization itself and history itself goes through on these different stages. I am not saying that most storytelling is intentionally based on a Hegelian model, but I am saying that this is fundamentally what storytelling is. This is the structure of most character writing that people tend to like. It is a tried and true formula, regardless of whether it's true regarding the development of civilization. It is certainly true regarding character dynamics, and has been since ancient times, and it really works. A great example, an obvious example, is something like Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He has these pre-existing beliefs about the world that are very much tied to his father's dictates and his desire to impress his father, and these beliefs lead to him making some foolish decisions. Ultimately, he goes through a lot of trying experiences in the world that lead to him realizing how limited and shallow that perspective is, leading to his very fraught and complicated process to abandon those existing beliefs and ultimately forge a new perspective based on the experiences he has. He, in his impulses, does not change so much, but in terms of how he believes he is fulfilling those impulses, his desire to be good and moral and virtuous. He really does want those things. He always does. But he understands much better how to fulfill those desires. Zuko is a very obvious example. There is a clear lie, quote unquote, that the character believes. But a lot of more nuanced character development is not that dramatic. I think The Legend of Korra actually provides a very thoughtful, very grounded iteration of this. So I'm like, Korra is not a bad person. She's just kind of naive and idealistic. She has a vision of the Avatar's authority as being based in fighting, defeating the bad guys physically, and so restoring justice to the world. But the world, the fundamental structure of the world is not right. It's imbalanced. The wisdom of the past, the wisdom of tradition does not suffice anymore, and so Korra needs to have many different experiences in the world, including seriously considering the ideas of many of her opponents and antagonists in order to develop this broader and more complete understanding of the world so that her more passionate and idealistic impulses can be tempered with this broader knowledge of how to act upon those impulses in the world in a balanced and broad-minded way. It's also clear in a character like Tenzin, who also suffers from being too rigidly dogmatic at the start of the show. He believes he is the keeper of his father's legacy and that of the Air Nation. To a certain extent, this is true, but this is an ultimately limited perspective, and it is only through having that perspective seriously challenged does he realize how psychologically unmooring it is to base his entire sense of self-worth on this rigid idea of what he believes his father wanted for him. And only when he lets go of that pre-existing too reductive ideal of himself is he able to truly grow as a person. That is good character writing, and it's what you see in a lot of very serious, thoughtful works, ranging from your Victorian novels of someone like Dickens or George Eliot or Thomas Hardy, to Russian literature, to a lot of literature in China, Japan. Like, this is a pretty similar dynamic. It is a journey to knowledge. It is a journey of trying to reconcile one's own beliefs and desires with knowledge of the world. There's not really a lot of that in The Dragon Prince, and I think that's one reason why the show is disappointing to me to an extent. It's not a coincidence that the characters who do have this kind of journey, someone like Claudia or Viren, are the most compelling characters of the show to me. Someone like Callum does not really have his existing beliefs about the world, his existing idealism strongly challenged. It's tested at some degrees, but he is never really forced to completely reconsider his pre-existing perspectives. There's not a lot of soul searching for him, or even a lot of understanding that he needs to act in a different way than he originally thought. The same with Rayla. It's not that these characters don't change or that there's no growth, but that there's not a lot of growth in this cognitive, contemplative kind of way that forces one to try to reckon with the way of the world that is fundamentally opposed, or at least indifferent to one's own passionate desires. Terry really suffers from this because who is he? He does not really have a lot of existing beliefs that can be challenged. He seems like a nice enough guy, but also he is fundamentally sided with someone who does a lot of terrible things. And it's not that he is fully okay with everything Claudia does, or that he doesn't have any problems with her, but there's no real sense of him trying to weigh these different considerations and these different factors until the end when he just leaves her. It feels kind of abrupt because why now, other than the fact that the story is calling for it? Is she really behaving in a worse way than what we saw in, say, Season 6, or even some parts of Season 5? It seems rather arbitrary. There is no real sense of Terry's core nexus of beliefs, and I think this is a problem. I don't need to know everything about his backstory, but I would like to know, why is he here, other than the fact that he likes Claudia? What does he think about what's going on? What other opinions and values does he have? What really led him to desire to join up with Claudia in the first place? If it's love, why does he love her? Like, I think that's a serious question that the show never really goes into. What is the root of their dynamic there? The show frustrates me because, number one, it wants to keep Terry as this very good, caring, considering person. It does not want to seriously reckon with his culpability, and at the same time, it presents him as constantly going along with what Claudia is saying, or going along with only a few objections. There is a good story to be told here about what is the psychology of someone who, for whatever reasons, inertia, comfort, stability, love, goes along with a lot of very questionable actions, willingly turns a blind eye to rather abhorrent events. There is a truly wonderful novel written about this called The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro that I highly recommend. I'm not saying it has to be that detailed and that emphatic, but there does need to be some reckoning with the complexities of Terry's behavior. And the show never really wants to go there, and I'm not really sure why. Part of me thinks they might not want to have painted him in a terrible negative light because he is a groundbreaking trans character in the show. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but it could be a reason. But dealing with a lot of that moral sludge, a lot of those ambiguous, conflicted feelings, is something you have to deal with if you are going to make a character like this, who is fundamentally and continuously on the side of evil, basically, if you are going to retain a grounded sense of psychology. The show does not always seem to understand that characters are defined by their actions. A character who is said to be one way, but does not actually demonstrate certain characteristics by their actions, is simply unintelligible. Characters, really like all human beings, are not simply these pre-existing essences. They are characterized, they are defined by what they choose, how they decide to behave. And fundamentally, that behavior, that deciding how to act, inevitably brings up this contradiction between one's grand ideals and how one is forced to operate in a practical sense that leads to a lot of interesting character dynamics and really leads to good, strong storytelling. There's not really a lot of that here. So I know on a basic structural level why this character exists. I simply do not know why they specifically chose to make it be him, to make this character be Claudia's boyfriend, if they are not going to go into a lot of the nuanced, rather uncomfortable complexities of that kind of dynamic. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, if you want to see more videos like this. Again, thank you all for watching this channel. I've really appreciated it. Adios, comrades.